I'm Amy, sex educator, sex and relationship coach, and sex shop owner.
And I'm April, VP of an international high-end pleasure products company and boss queen sex toy mogul. We're best friends who make our own rules about who we are as sexual beings.
With everything from how to be a badass in the bedroom to top tips for bringing your relationship to the next level, we have something just for you.
So sit back, relax,
and enjoy the show. Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.
You are listening to a pleasure podcast. For more from our sex podcast collective, visit pleasurepodcasts.com.
Well, hello, everyone.
Hello, party people.
I feel like we haven't done this in a while.
A musical episode?
Yeah. Welcome to the Shameless Sex Show.
No. Just kidding. We're not doing that.
No, we're not.
We are keeping our usual setup and not changing it up to a musical.
No, we're going to keep it just as it is. So this episode is with Dr. Jenn, Madness to Mindfulness, Reinventing Sex for Women. And I just want to put it out there that this isn't just for cis women. This is for actually all folks in terms of how we are told certain messages about who should be as sexual beings. And that's the madness, and that we can use mindfulness to actually recreate the sex life that we want to live, or actually more designed to live, that is uniquely ours. Don't tune out.
It was really one of my favorite episodes that we've done. No joke.
Well, it kind of is very much aligned with Shameless Sex, which is so interesting that we heard her speak. We're like, wait, are you part of our podcast? You're just...
She's awesome.
Yeah,
she's just a really powerful... So yeah, stay tuned. I just wanted to back up your statement on that, because it's a really great episode. I absolutely loved recording it.
Yeah, it is very useful information. So before we dive in, we have a couple of things. We have a testimonial from someone that actually is calling us out on something that we would like to own, lovingly calling us out. We love that. We love when people lovingly call us out. We also have a sex question that is about a sex doll, which should be fun and interesting. Also,
I haven't heard the question yet, but you were like, did you read that question? I was like, no. You're like, perfect. We are going into it.
I love to throw you for a loop with sex questions. Like,
I know.
You're like, oh shit. The person that was wanking to us, that was great. I love that.
I love that one.
So I just got back from Burning Man. I'm not going to talk too much about Burning Man as my 8th year at Burning Man, but I immediately went into surgery that I knew I was going to have a couple days after getting back. It was a minor surgery. I don't know if I've talked about this in the podcast, but I get cysts on my Bartholin's glands, which are two glands that you have on each side, vulva owners have, that are responsible for vaginal lubrication. The fluid that they produce, I think, is similar to the pre-cum that a penis would produce, where it's that clear, silky fluid that you produce when you're aroused, like initial arousal. And I really don't produce that fluid. I haven't for years, since my early 20s, or maybe if I do, it's just a little bit. And you get fluid from other places. You don't only get vaginal lubrication from those places, but one side has been pretty blocked and has been a good sized cyst. And in the last month or two, since I got my arousal back, it got really huge. And the other side, it is a little cyst, but it's not massive. It's draining a little bit. And so I had this surgery. And I just wanted to put that out there to people, because I don't think this is super common. I have met a couple other women that are dealing with this. And I personally have been dealing with it since my mid-20s. And I finally opted to do a surgery called a marsupialization, where they go and kind of essentially create a new tube for the fluid to travel out from this gland to travel out into my vaginal canal. I think that they sewed it in. It's actually going into my my hymen, which is another fun fact about hymen. People think we only have a hymen before we lose our virginity, my favorite term. No, I still have a hymen. We all still have hymens, actually. They don't disappear and go away. So just want to put that out there, though. If anyone is dealing with this, feel free to send us emails, and I can give you more feedback on this surgery that I did. But so far, I'm really happy with it and saw a really great doctor. And fun fact, I actually just got aroused this morning, and I got the surgery 2 days ago, and I saw that fucking fluid it came back. The fluid that I haven't seen, like that.
Was it painful to get aroused though?
No, not at all.
With the stitches and stuff? Oh,
no, I have stitches in my bits. I have stitches on 2 sides of my bits. It's not super painful. And I got aroused and I saw that same fluid, might have some blood mixed with it because it's healing, but it wasn't, but I was like, oh my God, that fluid that I haven't seen since my, like late 20s.
Teens? Oh.
No, last time I remember seeing it, I was like
20s.
27 or 28. And then it kind of disappeared. So I'm really excited about this. And I'm currently healing. And April picked me up from the doctor. I was in a wheelchair, all high after anesthesia.
All high. I was like, oh, damn.
I was like, Jack,
where's your dog?
Yeah.
I was like, he's in the back.
Yeah. So I'm in healing and I have stitches in my bits right now. But it's not painful. Okay. Testimonial.
It's a good reason to binge watch Euphoria on HBO.
Oh my gosh. We should talk about in this episode.
Totally.
Yeah. I watched the whole season in one day, by the
I'm
way.
sure.
Made me
It's addicting.
really happy to not be a drug addict.
Yeah.
Okay, so testimonial. This is from a listener, and we really appreciate it. It's partially a testimonial and also them setting us straight about some things that we may have not done perfectly. And again, we recommend encourage this. We are happy to own our parts where we could have done better. So this listener says, I'd like to start by saying that I started listening to your podcast a few months ago and I've completely devoured it. It's pretty amazing. Unfortunately, I heard some really alarming perspectives on the bonus episode number 48, Sex, Drugs, and More Sex. You were discussing using and abusing power in a sexual encounter, and April was speaking on it being a decision to somewhat allow this type of control and manipulation, also using a personal experience where she had said no in a similar position. This is highly problematic to portray the idea that everyone has the same option to say no. We are then assuming that the quality of your environment, social or cultural identities, education, and mental health are at the same standards for all. Plenty of women have been stuck in situations where it was fight or flight, and they didn't feel that they had the option left or anyone to turn to. I love you both, and power to all the shameless sex. Let's remember not everyone has the same privilege to say no in certain situations, and let's keep creating a new level of support. Thank you for putting all these wonderful, educational, sexy topics out there and giving all of us sexual beings a place to breathe and not feel totally weird. I really appreciated this. I don't remember exactly what we said or what the stories were, what we, what you shared, but I just I like the part that, that assuming that everyone is the same. And I personally think that, like, my privileged life, I do forget that just because I have the ability to say no at times and be that strong, empowered woman and set down, boundaries and rules, I think I forget that other people who might not live such a privileged life don't necessarily have that ability.
Yeah.
So I really liked that kind of highlighting of how we may have missed that part. So
and I think it's important to note that that situation that I was talking about, I grew up with a lot of adversity. I'm self-made. I have paved my way, and I tend to be leaning on a smart spectrum. I love my intelligence. I appreciate it. And I was savvy enough to get the fuck out of that situation. And I understand that folks aren't always of the same mental capacity, or they might be in really traumatic situations where they don't have options.
They don't have anywhere to go.
And the thing is, it's like, hopefully those folks can find a way, because if you try and you try again, hopefully you can find a way. However, it is good to honor those people out there that are not able to figure out how to escape, how to get out of it.
Well, and if you're stuck, right, you literally feel like you're stuck. And then when fight or flight kicks in too, by the way, I mean, that is some hard shit to overcome. That talk about being stuck. You're run by a primal, mechanical operating system. And then if you already living in, social or cultural or environmental conditions where you don't have access to support or other options, literally your survival depends on it. Not everyone has the ability to say no. So I think that's what this person's highlighting is, like, for you and for me, it's not really about survival necessarily for us. No. We're going to fucking be okay. But for a lot of people, it is about survival, and they still, the fight or flight makes it so that they can't necessarily, there is not a choice.
I just hope at some point just the people that are doing the violating will just
figure it out.
And then it would make it easier for everyone to live in harmony, peace, love, and harmony. Yeah. Mic drop, we're out of a job.
Yeah, that's true. We would be out of a job.
We would
but
be.
Still, we really don't wish harm upon anyone. And this podcast, one reason why we wanted this to be on this podcast is because one thing that Dr. Jenn talks about is the shame and the trauma that a lot of women are living with, and the messages that we're given, and these terrible situations that are constantly. I mean, it's not just women, but just that's why we wanted to highlight that here. I just thought it was a really important podcast to share. So don't worry, there will be juicy stuff, but this is also really important, especially during these times. We're really living in a time where we are highlighting the diversity of sexual experiences, and it is beyond what my experience is and beyond what yours is. And there's so many things, cultural, environmental, education, social that contribute to the experiences that we have.
I also share something on this podcast that I haven't shared before that pertains to what that listener's testimonial / feedback was. And I was shamed for something that was pretty heavy and that I wore on my armor of shame for quite a while. And so, stay tuned because you'll hear some of that. So
you've been outing a lot of good shit in this podcast.
I know. Keep going.
I'm proud of you.
Keep listening. Yep. I have more nuggets in there probably somewhere.
Speaking of nuggets, you ready for a spicy sex question?
Ooh, yeah.
My husband and I have recently gone through a tough patch, and we were not connected at all, mostly his avoidance of intimacy and sex. He finally opened up completely about his fear of intimacy and even told me that he had a sex doll. He said he didn't want any secrets between us. He answered all my questions, and it was then that he broke down in tears. I was totally accepting of the doll. I was present, accepting, and it was in that moment he said everything changed for him. He even took me downstairs to see the doll. It was pretty fucking hot. He said he had total trust, and he had these feelings he's never had before, not wanting to be avoidant anymore. We are now fucking like newlyweds. I told him I wanted to see the doll more. He said next time I get off work, he will have her out and set up, and then maybe I can help him give her a bath, spray bottle, and cloth, and then powder her down. My question to you is, I was going to try and change the bath into a threesome with him and the doll. I need ideas on things to do, positions, and whatnot that would include myself and the doll to turn him on. Fucking awesome question.
Well, the thing is about we're in 2019.
Yes,
sex dolls are so amazing compared to they're not like the blow up inflatable ones anymore where you're like, oh,
where they have just like the whole gaping hole, like, oh.
And they're like so, in my opinion, scary. Those things freaked me out. I was like, what?
There was nothing.
Remember when we sold at Pure Pleasure, we had like the Belladonna doll?
Oh yeah,
and I was like, that is freaky.
And it never looks like the actual porn star.
No, it was really weird. It was inflatable. Yeah. And so the fact that now you can go on and look at these dolls, and they really can become interesting to look at. There's no consent needed. They're sex dolls. Mm-hmm. So you could bring in a third robot / doll into your sexual experience with a partner.
It's not going to it's not going to fall in love with your partner. Yeah.
I think this is I love that they shared this, and thank you. And I love the fact that they're asking for some tips and tricks to have a threesome with the doll.
Originally, it was going to turn to a bath, and they're like, actually, I want to turn it into a threesome. And so, honestly, I actually don't have the answer to this question. I don't know anything about sex positions with the sex doll.
I think it would be cool to. This is only my opinion and my feedback, to almost have the doll embody the things that maybe you really like and are too afraid to share, or maybe you're not afraid, you haven't even gone there or explored yet, and you could do those things, and then the next experience you could be like, remember what we did with Bianca or whatever her name is.
I'm wondering, is the doll a third? Like, is the doll the unicorn? Is the doll like the side lover that comes in? I mean, you could paint this as like a threesome, a hot scenario. It's a scene. Yeah. And so does the doll come in and join you two? Is the doll the center of attention? Is your partner the center of attention?
Well, the beauty of it is it could always shift.
Yeah, it could shift. But it might be a really great opportunity, like you were saying, to turn it into a whole scene and put a lot of thought into it, and like write this whole erotica story.
Like tie her up or something, like, and come in and who is this that we have here? Yeah. How amazing.
Fancy seeing
and
you
maybe
here.
She's tied up in different positions where different things are exposed or
maybe
honored,
she's
or
the dom. She's just like,
Or
or she's just sitting in the corner watching you two fuck, and then like you crawl over to her and you go down on her while he's fucking you from behind. I mean, the possibilities are limitless,
endless.
All the things that
you could really do so much with this.
This
so
is very exciting.
The answer to this question is the world is your oyster,
and you're awesome.
Open that shit up and just take advantage.
Yeah, but I think like what some of the things is like put some thought into it before, like what would turn you on, and maybe check in with him too, like. You know, you're going to turn into a threesome without checking in with me. That's cool. You might want to still ask him about that and just to see where he's at with that too. But so maybe the bath, it turns into like, hey, what if we started doing this? What would turn you on? You know, what is the scenario? And then paint it out. But God, I love questions like that. I mean, I love all questions, but I love fun, playful ones. I'm like,
well, this is totally out of the box. I wouldn't have really expected it. So thank you for writing us and asking us, and
have fun.
Good luck on your journey.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a beautiful one.
It's going to be great. All right, so I'm going to read a bio. Jennifer Gunsaullus. It is spelled Gunsaullus.
German.
It's German. Yeah. Gunsaullus, PhD, sociologist and intimacy coach, is a national speaker on couples intimacy, sexual consent, women's empowerment, gender communication, erotic play, and mindful sex. She has presented 2 TEDx Talks, and as April and I are saying, soon to be just TED Talks, because we're rooting for her. She's an amazing speaker. She's a co-host of the podcast Sex Talk with Clint and the Doc. And her first book, From Madness to Mindfulness, Reinventing Sex for Women, was just released in August 2019. Dr. Jenn has over 1.5 million hits on her In the Den with Dr. Jenn, that's 2 N's, Jenn, YouTube video series, and is an expert in the documentary on masturbation called Sticky, a self-love story. To learn more, visit drjensden.com. That's DRJENNSDEN.com. And we're going to dive in, but before we do...
This podcast is made possible by Manscaped. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for you or your man's family jewels. I'm personally a huge fan of a well-trimmed bush. That's why I recently gave my partner Manscaped's redesigned electric trimmer, the Lawnmower 2.0, and he absolutely loves it. With its skin-safe technology, this trimmer won't nick or snag any nuts.
Manscaped also has a crop cleanser, a crop reviver, aka for your goods, and best of all, the crop preserver, a fabulous ball deodorant for anti-chafing. Dripping with perspiration from living life on the go, going for a sweaty bike ride, or perhaps you're getting clammy during the awkward first date. Manscaped's crop preserver will keep you fresh and dry just when you need it. And guess what? Our listeners get 20% off and free shipping with the code SHAMELESS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code SHAMELESS and your bits will thank you for it. This podcast is also made possible by Audible Escape. Audible Escape offers unlimited listening to thousands of love stories that have the ability to whisk you away no matter where you are.
I've been an avid Audible listener for years because I love that I can listen to just about anything I want to while I'm on the go. And now, with Audible's newest offering, I can escape from a chaotic day with a heartwarming love story. I'm currently deep into Jane Austen's romantic classic, Sense and Sensibility, and I can't help but get lost in the timeless tale of love, romance, and total heartbreak. And I adore the narrator's soothing British accent. It just makes the perfect romantic read.
And guess what? It's free to try for your first month and then only $12.95 a month after. Download the app and fill your life with more love. Visit audible.com/shameless to get started. That's audible.com/shameless. And if you love, you'll love Audible Escape. Go check it out. And now back to the show. All right, everyone, episode time once again. This podcast, as you know from the intro, is on madness to mindfulness, reinventing sex for women.
We're actually changing things up today, and we're going to do a musical podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Get ready, Amy.
This is April's delirious. She needs
we just lost like 3,000 listeners right there. Like, damn it, these bitches are singing now.
I did not sign up for this podcast. All right, so Jennifer, do you go by Jenn, Dr. Jenn, right?
Often Dr. Jenn, yeah.
Dr. Jenn.
Boss Queen Jenn.
How do I pronounce your last name again?
It's Gunsaullus.
Gunsaullus.
The German version.
Yeah, I was like, that is Gunsaullus? Really?
Right. I know. Gunsaullus. Yeah, it's so weird.
Okay.
I know.
Got it. So Jennifer Gunsaullus, PhD, here to teach us all about all this madness that we're living in and how to go to mindfulness. We're specifically talking about women here. But before we dive into the topic, how did you get to where you are today? I'm sure you experienced a lot of madness. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I was raised Catholic. So there's a good start in a small town in Pennsylvania outside Philadelphia, and was raised with all of those for many of us, what are typical quote unquote good girl messages, following the rules, and you put the needs of others first, and, sex is a shameful thing or something you don't talk about. We're certainly, never taught about the clitoris or our pleasure or anything like that. None of that's normalized. And so definitely was raised just in our society and religious wise around a lot of that, what I call madness. But I went to Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, and my roommate, my sophomore year, became a sexual health peer educator. And so I was, the folks that go around to the dorms and do condom demonstrations and talk about safer sex. And she was having fun with the group. And I was like, well, that looks like a fun group to join. And plus at that time, I didn't have any public speaking skills, and I was really uncomfortable. Just, sometimes raising my hand in class, but certainly doing class presentations. And so I was like, well, I figure if you can get up and talk about sex, you can probably talk about anything, which turns out to be quite true. And, so I joined that group and then became super fascinated about how people make decisions around sex and gender differences and how we're raised, and around what gender roles we've been socialized into, and people's comfort or lack of comfort around condom use or negotiating condom use, all of those factors. So that's how, and at this point, that was over 25 years ago that I started in the field, and then went on to get my PhD in sociology and getting involved with the vagina monologues. And my dissertation had to do with HIV prevention programs targeting adult women. So I got into this field definitely through the sexual health realm. And then through through the sex education and the activist realm as well. Mm-hmm. So, and then I've been in San Diego for almost 16 years and really bringing a much more holistic mind, body, spirit approach into my work.
Mm-hmm. It seems, since you've been in this work for now almost 25 years, you said?
Yeah, since I started. Yeah. So in and out of it, but yeah.
I'm sure you've seen the ebb and flow and the tides of the sexual madness changing. And it's I think a good time to ask you exactly, what do you mean by sexual madness, and kind of what is that sexual madness? Because I know it's specifically, we're talking about women, and not necessarily cis women, but folks that identify as women. But how does that impact women and their sex lives? The sexual madness. Yeah.
The sexual madness that I speak of in my new book is looking at particularly if you were labeled a female at birth, and then therefore socialized into what that means in our society and treated in that way. You were raised with a lot of, what I said, those quote unquote good girl ideologies. And a lot of, what I'm calling the madness is that so much of what we're trained in as girls and young women is to view our body as the enemy, to feel sexual shame for having desire, not even knowing that our desire is normal, not being taught about masturbation or clitoris, or that it's okay to explore your body. Faking orgasms, coercion culture that we live in, blaming women for rape. Like, there's just so many components of it. And that's all what I'm calling the madness. And then as adult women, we're supposed to flip a switch and be like, oh, sex is great, and I'm open and able to share my sexual desire and pleasure with you, my lifetime heterosexual partner. We have this like crazy limited version of what it's supposed to look like, and it just doesn't work that way. You don't get all of these negative programmed messages into you, and then just flip a switch and suddenly enjoy your sex life and be in touch with yourself and just be done with the shame or embarrassment around these topics. And then so many women think there's something wrong with them, that they're broken in some way. So all of that is what I'm, as a sociologist, calling the madness, sexual madness.
That's so okay. Yeah, so I got surgery recently, and April gave me the login to her HBO Now program. Sorry, HBO, to get mad at us.
You all get it. I'm just kidding.
and I started watching this show called Euphoria. Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay. So it's like a whole bunch of young teens. They take a lot of drugs and there's a lot of sex, but a lot of it is, there's like one of the just super douchey guys, and there's like essentially there's like sluts and prudes, so this message is to these young girls that is, and it's not just the boys that are giving to them, the girls are saying this about each other as well. But there's this idea that you're either a slut or prude, and they're both bad, and you don't want to be either. But if you're one, you're fucked, and if you're the other, you're fucked. And then you grow up, like you're saying, you grow up and all of a sudden now you're supposed to have it all figured out when you lived your whole teenage life trying to run from you actually not fitting in anywhere, or it was the ideas of where you were supposed to be. And I know this is different for everyone. Like when I saw that, I was like, that was not my upbringing. Yet there was some subtle ways that was definitely there. And I want to also say that I know that there's hard for cis men too. There are different ideas with masculinity. They're very tricky.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't want to be the creepy, rapey guy. You also don't want to be the too soft guy. So I know that's also confusing. And so I don't want to discredit the fact that, again, we're talking specifically for women here, but that is available, or not available, but exists for men as well.
And I speak to that in one part of my book. While the focus is on women and folks that were raised as girls and female in our society, I speak to, these gender roles keep us all in a box. Mm-hmm. These gender roles teach us all what's normal, quote unquote, and natural. And we're policed by other people if we, try to act or dress or behave in a way that's outside the box of our expected gender role. Mm-hmm. And we could be shamed or stigmatized for it or abused for it. And so then we learn to police ourselves and keep ourselves in those boxes. And I talked a lot about what the impact on women, but the impact on many men, if they're raised with the heteronormative version of masculinity, is that they're supposed to be in charge and go for what they want and not take a no and never show weakness and not express their emotions, except anger. And so they lose touch with their own emotional needs. Oftentimes we literally train emotional intelligence out of our boys and young men. And then they're not in touch with themselves, and they have anger issues, and they can't have intimate relationships, and they're more likely to, be coercive, in sexual encounters and not even know it, or to be abusive. And so they're not happy. The relationships aren't happy. Women aren't happy. Their kids aren't happy, and society's not happy. So this is bad for everybody involved. And not that there's not beautiful aspects of masculinity. There's many versions of masculinity. We just have a mainstream version that can be quite harmful to men and to women and to society, especially around sex and intimacy topics.
So how does mindfulness fit in here then? I think, and I just want to also point out for folks who are like, oh, mindfulness is the M word, right? Like meditation. Oh, now here those hippies go talking about really challenging things that drive me crazy because it's hard to do, or because presence is a challenge. And we talk about this in our podcast often. We say, when we're helping people with their sex and relationship, the questions that they're asking, it is, are you in your body? Are you being present for your emotions? Are you speaking to them? Are you even allowing yourself to feel what is there? Can you talk more about mindfulness skills and how they can change the course of a woman's sex life and intimacy?
Yeah. And I teach what I call applied mindfulness skills. So while, mindfulness learned through meditation and formal meditation practices is incredibly powerful, and everybody should do that. Many folks just won't. And in today's society. So I teach applied mindfulness in terms of noticing specifically what's happening in any moment that you feel like you want to shut down or lash out or distract yourself or numb yourself or run away from a conversation or a thought or a feeling. And so, your partner brings up, hey, it's been a few months since we've had sex. Can we talk about that? And you get triggered, what that trigger could be any of those things. Like I said, you could lash out, you could shut down, you could distract, you could blame, all sorts of things we do to not be in the moment with something that feels really uncomfortable. So that's what I teach women do. I pull back the layers of that and teach them how to notice what are your belief systems in that moment? What are your interpretations? What meaning does that question have to you? What emotions do you have? Everything from fear to disappointment to rejection to anxiety to shame to humiliation. to sadness. And then literally, where do you feel that in your body? So is your head kind of buzzing? Do you feel constriction in your throat? Do you have a prickly feeling in your chest, or your solar plexus have like a hollow feeling, or like a dropping feeling, or a nauseous feeling in your belly? Like all of that feels really horrible, frankly. It's how you know you're doing mindfulness right. It feels bad.
Yeah, it doesn't feel great. You're like, oh, this is really fun.
I know. I don't start that as my selling point for mindfulness. You know you're doing it right when it feels really bad.
Yeah. You're gonna love it.
But it's learning to sit with that discomfort in any given moment. That's where the magic happens in our lives. That's where that level of dropping into vulnerability and authenticity through mindfulness, and also self-compassion, being kind to yourself, because this is hard and it feels bad. Like that is where all of our potential lies for having the type of and depth of intimacy we all really crave in relationships. So, pulling back those layers of, all of that discomfort in the moment. I help women learn to identify it, all those different aspects of thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations. I teach them how to sit with it and breathe through it, how to drop the story and just be with the raw sensations. And then what can you do differently then? Because now all of a sudden you didn't go off on a pattern that's been programmed into you for 15 years. You actually stayed present with it. And now you have choices that didn't exist before. And I genuinely think that is the epitome of empowerment. Choices where we didn't have choices before. And around sex and intimacy, we often don't have many choices, or don't realize there can be other ways of doing things. So, and so applying that approach, all of the madness we talked about childhood messages, I have women, and in each chapter in my book ends with worksheets, so women can actually write in and be in process in this throughout the book of sitting with, what were your early sexual experiences? What did you learn about intimacy? What did you learn it means to be a woman? What shame do you carry? What were your religious messages? All of those things, and shining a bright light on them, and then seeing where does it still live in you in ways that's interfering with the type of intimacy and connection and pleasure that you're looking for. So that's a really great, starting point. And then also applying all of that to patterns in relationships, where you shut down communication and bringing that same type of presence. And then also in the moment in sexual encounters, essentially in the moment, how do you attune to your pleasure and attune to your partner, and, emotions and physical attunement.
Okay, y'all, time for a quick break. This podcast is made possible by some of our favorite things. Uberlube is one of them. It's a luxurious lubricant great for all kinds of sex. It's less likely to throw off your pH than most other lubes. Seriously? There are hundreds of doctors who recommend Uberlube to their patients, whether they want to make their hot sex even hotter or for folks who are experiencing dryness. Amy, I know you love Uberlube too. What do you love?
I love Uberlube because it has no flavor, no scent, and it feels absolutely amazing on my body. In fact, I want it everywhere. I even use it in my hair for my hair frizzies, for massage, and it can also prevent chafing. Oh, and the bottle is gorgeous. It's discreet and looks like a beautiful cosmetic product, so you can leave it on your nightstand shamelessly. To learn why we think it's the best lube on the planet, go check out uberlube.com. Use coupon code SHAMELESSSEX and you get 10% off and free shipping. Again, that's uberlube.com, code SHAMELESSSEX, and 10% off and free shipping.
This podcast was also made possible by omgs.com. OMGS is a research-based online program that helps you add more sexy things to your menu. OMGS studied thousands of vulva owners to find out how they orgasm, and then made tasteful and inspiring short videos to show you techniques on how to pleasure yourself or another vulva. Amy, tell us why you love OMGS.
I've been recommending OMGS to my clients for years, and it has changed their lives. Whether you're already having good orgasms and want to have even better orgasms, or perhaps you want to explore more variety in your playtime, or even learn how to pleasure someone else's vulva, OMGS will have something for you. With 2 seasons, one all about internal and the other all about external techniques, it's better than any book or DVD that money can buy. To learn more, visit omgs.com/shameless, and our listeners get $5 off. That's omgs.com/shameless. You get $5 off. Go check it out now. And back to the show.
So this seems like a book, because at first when I was reading kind of the title, because I haven't read the book yet because it just launched, right? Last month, this is September now, August, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Congrats on that. I was like, okay, so this is maybe for folks that are struggling with their sex lives, they're living in that sexual madness. It seems though, from just speaking with you, that this is for every human. Maybe I don't want to say every vulva owning human, but anybody could benefit from this. Obviously, if they're at an age where they can take on the information, because you could always improve on getting in tune with yourself and your body. So that to me is just, it's an observation, but I thought interesting to share. So do you agree, or do you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And this book, it's funny because
I just forced that on you.
No, I totally.
Am I right or am I right? What are you?
You are right. These basic mindfulness skills are basic, like personal growth skills. And so anybody that's working on personal growth, but specifically around emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, sexual intimacy, absolutely. So many of the skills and exercises in the book are for everybody to do. Mm-hmm. Now it's I feel like this is kind of 4 books or 3 books in one, in that there's a fair amount of personal stories that I share, and each chapter starts with a personal story. There's also chapter 1 is my sex madness chapter. And as a sociologist, I'm sharing a lot of what I think is the most interesting research that helps women see that if you think you're alone in all your struggles or you're broken in some way, it is totally not you, sister. Like, just look at the research of what's out there around orgasm and masturbation and sex education and coercion culture and all those things. And so that's kind of its own little separate piece. And then I have, the mindfulness chapter on its own, which would be fantastic for anybody to read, and really get this version, especially for folks that are like, I want to be practicing meditation or mindfulness. I feel like this would be helpful. I just can't seem to sit down and do formal practices. If you want an applied version of it that you can immediately start improving your relationships with others and your communication, then definitely, check out chapter 2 is the mindfulness chapter. And then chapter 3 applies it to relationships, and how to have conversations and how to, cultivate gratitude for your partner and appreciation and all sorts of ways of moving towards uncomfortable conversations instead of away from them. And how do you cultivate that level of vulnerability with your partner? And then chapter 4 applies it specifically to sex, desire, and passion.
One thing that came to mind, we were talking about before we got on the call about Burning Man, because I just came back from Burning Man. And I was saying this at Burning Man this year. I was like, this Burning Man is a test of how comfortable I can get with discomfort. Like, it's a constant test, a constant reminder that life is not about being comfortable, that in Burning Man is everything under a magnifying glass of like, wow, this is really amazing or really fucking hard. And like, how comfortable can I get with that? And maybe comfortable is not the right word, but how much can I embrace discomfort as part of the human experience, as part of living life fully, and that it's not always sunshine and rainbows and joy and ease. In fact, it usually isn't. I think more often than not, or if it is for you, then life might also be a little dull or dim, perhaps, if it's just all super easy. So that's just one thing that came to mind for me. Like, oh yeah, I understand that piece. Can we talk a little more about, because this podcast, we're shameless sex. We talk about shame all the time. And we have so many listeners that send us emails that have shame or they have trauma. What are some of the ways that women can overcome sexual shame and embarrassment around sex topics and expressing their needs?
Yeah. And shame that's a core topic that I address in the book. It's so, such a tricky topic.
Yeah, that's why we have a whole podcast.
Yeah, thankfully. Yeah. Because, when we feel shame, we don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. We don't want to think about it. We don't want to feel it because it is such a deeply shitty feeling, mm-hmm. That we just want to bury our heads in the sand. And so it's so tricky that way. And because then when we keep it in silence and we keep it hidden, it just festers, in the shadows of our life, and it undermines us in the long run and undermines our ability to connect with others and certainly our ability to love ourselves, let alone like ourselves. So this whole process of choosing to move towards that discomfort. And you said it, getting comfortable with discomfort. That's the whole intent of my book. And specifically getting comfortable with the discomfort of sexual shame and embarrassment. And so I think it's super helpful, the somatic aspect of mindfulness, where you locate in your body where you're feeling something. That level of presence is so, that's the part that's really hard, but it's so, something switches when you're willing to stay that present with the raw, uncomfortable sensations in a moment, especially around sexual shame, which we tend to feel a lot in our chest. We feel it in our solar plexus, and then we feel it up into our faces because we often will get flushed. And it's just such a, it's like a foundational crappy feeling. If that was a definition for an emotion, that's the one. And so, but learning to actually move towards that and not run from it, even if it's for 30 seconds, just to breathe in and locate, okay, where is that? How big is it? How would I describe the shape of it? Does it have a color? Sometimes it's like prickly and sometimes it's swirly. And I have clients do this exercise, which is the most sort of bizarre, abstract exercise, but they get it. And what we're able to do then is take something, because shame, when it hits us, it feels overwhelming. And we're rarely able to observe it and do anything else with it. It just runs its course. And it's often a harmful course in the long run. And so to get that detailed about what you're feeling and where it is, you've taken something that's so abstract and you've made it almost tangible, because you can locate right where that is inside of you. And you've attached a color and a size and all those things to it. And that means it's now something you can deal with. It's like, oh, I feel crappy. Oh, it's that thing again. I've had clients even name their triggers that they want to avoid. And by choosing to move towards it, you're befriending it. You're not compartmentalizing it. You're not rejecting it. You're accepting it as part of you and accepting it as part of you and all of your beauty and messiness as a human being. That to me is a fundamental level of acceptance. And that's where then, once we learn to sit with that discomfort, we gain a lot of power. I think that's real empowerment, because in many ways, around sexual topics in society for all people, but my specialty area is women. And so as women, we're controlled in a lot of ways through our sexual shame, by sexually shaming us and judging us for our choices. And that keeps us small, or it keeps us quiet, and it keeps us scared. It's brilliant and it's horrible. And unfortunately, that's a lot of religious approaches to sexual topics and controlling women. And so when we are willing to move towards that discomfort and actually say yes to it, and you could be like, I don't like you, but you're a part of me. And so I'm going to accept you, and I'm going to explore you, and I'm going to befriend you, and I'm going to know you and all your nuances. Even if you just, like I said, even if you can just do it for 30 seconds or a minute at a time, over time, you'll build emotional resilience to be able to sit with that discomfort and then actually make choices. Then, okay, this is just a feeling. The story that's attached to it doesn't have to be true. I can start rewriting my story. And that's what we get access to. When we can sit and move through our shame that way, we get access to actually rewriting our sexual stories. Because they've been written for us largely by society, by shitty experiences, by things that were out of our control. And once we realize that, so I think my book overall is really a process of teaching women how to build the skills and give themselves permission to start rewriting their sexual stories and figure out how do they want to be, authentic in their sexuality, but on their own terms.
So aligned with our podcast.
I know. It's almost like a book written for this podcast. The thing that I wanted to share something that it came up for me while you were speaking, and I was totally with you listening the whole time, but I was like, this is probably an important thing to share. And I was assaulted by an Uber driver when I lived in LA. And I had shared, there was some shame in it. And I had totally shared with someone, and when I was sharing, the person that I chose to share with at the time said, "What did you do?" And I was so then I became so kind of shrouded in the like, what did I do? And then I was not wanting to choose to share that with anyone else because I did start blaming myself. Like, oh, I should have been smarter. I don't know, should in myself. And I think it's important for listeners out there that perhaps maybe have chosen to share their shame with someone or their trauma with someone, and maybe it wasn't received, and so they've been wearing this thing.
Yeah,
it's just like that's the work that your book is offering to folks that perhaps have had shame, that be like, no, I just want to forget about that. I want to totally remove it from my memory. Well, it's still there, and it's living in your DNA. And so doing this type of work and embodied practices, which I have now realized, of course, thankfully, through mindfulness and through a lot of work, and the work that your book's describing, which I can't wait to read. It just came out, by the way, so I will read it now that it's out, that it can still be healed, and it can be healed within yourself, but then you can also get a shame ally and people that you can trust to share the things that have happened that aren't going to be like, what did you do? Because that's the shit that is just not helpful. And yeah, right? Isn't that?
I could feel it. I could feel that in my chest when you
I get I just got flushed. Like it could be the margins wine. No, it's but
it's real anger.
It is real anger. So I just thought that was an important piece to share. It came up when you were speaking, and I wanted to speak on that as well. But Jennifer, thank you for this work. It's really cool.
I was going to say something else. Can I?
No, please. No, you can, of course. I just wanted to thank you because this is powerful thank you.
No, I was going to say what you said, like Brene Brown at the beginning of one of her books, because I quote her on quite a bit in my introduction. And I was thrilled. When I came across her work like 8 years ago, I was like, oh, she's doing what I'm doing, and she's got the research to back it up. And I'm like, and I, apply it to sex and intimacy. So, but that's what she talks about. Like, we need to choose carefully who we want to be so vulnerable with to share our shame. Because in general, like, we handle that really badly. Like, because our, somebody else's shame makes us uncomfortable. And then if we're not mindful and we don't have the skills to sit with that and create that safe space for someone else, we then further shame them. Mm-hmm. And I think around, sexuality topics, that happens all the time. I think so many women, we've had experiences of things like that where we're choosing to be vulnerable and authentic, and then we get blamed for it in some way. And then it just further, makes us want to put our heads in the sand, because that is just to be that raw and to share something that personal. And then, that's the fear of vulnerability. You let your armor down and you could be hurt at that level. That's why we have our armor up. Exactly. So, if you have a lot of armor up, we need to find folks who are trustworthy, to be witnesses for our shame, and to be able to create safe spaces for us, and that they don't project their own shit on us. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
in that case too, we've said this in the podcast before, if you don't have folks that speaking to our listeners, if you don't have folks that because I've met many people, I don't have anyone I can talk to about this kind of stuff. My parents shame me. My friends have traditional perspectives. They shame me, so there's plenty of those people. And that's when, we invite them to go work with professionals. And there are people, such as yourself, Jennifer, Dr. Jenn, and other folks where you're working closely with someone, but it still is serving as someone who can, hear you and be a loving sounding board or a guide, or just, a shoulder to lean on. Maybe you're not, always touching your therapist, but no touching. Yeah. But it is available. There are people. I understand that. Not everyone has a community where they can go and share all of their vulnerability and all this hard stuff, but there's always ways. And now we have the internet where we can work with people online, and I'm sure you do that. Do you do video calls with clients and things too now?
Yeah, Skype clients. Yeah.
So do you work with, so we tell us more about the people that you work with. Are you taking clients, and are you working?
Well, so I had a while back, I had a really full practice, and then I've slowly been in the past few years letting it dwindle. So I just have a really small private practice because I wanted to get my first book done and published, and public speaking is my real passion. Yeah. So I travel around the country and talk at universities about sexual consent and communication through the lens of mindfulness and compassion. And so like really looking at these awkward social situations in that gray area that I think so many sexual encounters live in. So, and, you know, and then talking to other groups, Valentine's events and couples intimacy events. And I do a sex game show with people and all sorts of stuff. So the public speaking is my real passion, and traveling around and doing that, women's health conferences and all.
I smell a TED Talk.
She already has a TED Talk.
Oh,
well, I have two TEDx Talks.
Oh, perfect.
I would like to do a real TED Talk. That's definitely on the bucket list. So
let's put it out there right now into the infinity and beyond TED Talk. You'd be amazing. I was just thinking you definitely can captivate because we see you on Zoom. People out there in listening land only hear you, but you are very well spoken, and I would definitely love to hear your TED Talk and see.
Yeah, there's something to be said about when someone has like you can tell that public speaking is your passion because you can see a fire there. I mean, you're sitting in your living room, you know, we're just having a conversation, but there still is this fire there because it sounds like you deeply feel it in your soul and your being. So yeah, I really, really admire that. I love seeing people who have, especially women who hold that, women around sexuality too. It's just, we need it. And especially when we're talking about this kind of stuff where women are stuffing their beliefs and thoughts and needs. And then you have women with fire who are like, fuck that. This is actually, there is another path. And
a path with mindfulness and compassion, because I think, you know, what we have a lot of is loud voices and angry voices. And we have a right to be, because we've been treated like shit for way too long. Yeah. And those voices need to be out there. But how do we, because as a sociologist, I'm always trying to bridge gaps. You know, I'm always trying to bridge. I'm like, okay, traditionally men were raised with this masculinity and women with this femininity. How do we bridge these conversations? Because our brains have been trained to look at things really differently, and that's causing a lot of issues. So I'm always about like everybody has a voice, and you know, everybody has a version of the truth, and how do we blend them together and make this fair, and make sure everybody's voices matter. So, which is tough around sex and intimacy, because we feel so deeply about these topics, or so deeply uncomfortable about them, that we just want to shut down conversations. So I'm always trying to bridge those gaps, and mindfulness and compassion are a really great way to do that.
Yeah, I love that. Mindfulness and compassion. Everyone, they don't have to be scared. M word and the C word. Compassion. I mean, I don't think compassion scares most people. I think mindfulness and meditation can, because it's almost like a task, and compassion is a little, but there's so much gold in compassion. There's just,
although some people think it's a weakness, you know, that if someone has done bad things, you shouldn't have compassion for them, because that means you're forgiving them or you're condoning what they're doing, versus just realizing we are this sense of common humanity, that we are all just want to be happy and free from suffering. And, you know, we have different paths in life, you know, because like when Trump was elected, I had just finished, thankfully, the timing for me, at least personally, was good. I mean, if there's ever a good timing for that, which there isn't, but just to be clear, but I had just finished an 8-week cultivating compassion class where I learned to sit with suffering, my suffering and the suffering of others. And then wanting to do something about it. And then how do I transform that into action, or into compassion for myself, at least, so I don't get stuck in the suffering. And so I call compassion like empathy and action. And it was super helpful, because I could actually step back and be like, ooh, Trump is not a happy man. Yeah. That's not a happy man. That is no doubt he is not having sex, at least not with his wife. And we're all making the same facial expression here.
That's the thing with I was brought up in the Midwest, and it was pretty conservative, but I was brought up to learn that I was taught, I should say, because I'm choosing sometimes what to learn, that meditation was basically letting evil energy in, and it was not to be done. Like you're letting in the evil, like you're opening yourself up to evil spirits to come in. I was like, what the fuck?
It's a weird Wisconsin shit.
It was some weird, I don't even know if it was Wisconsin. It was just weird familial bullshit.
People that think like yoga is like a satanic cult or something like that. Yeah. Oh,
it was really interesting. I have no idea. And it was this weird, I had this weird sort of affliction with meditation until I started practicing it, and I realized how beneficial it was for my entire system. So
now she's meditating every morning.
Yeah, now I meditate every morning. I feel if I don't meditate, it's almost like I ate a Big Mac and which I haven't done. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't function. Like I need to be able to think clearly because so much is happening during the day. So it's all about having an openness, and hopefully folks listening have an openness because they're listening to this podcast, and then knowing that you can retrain and reframe the way that, not that you'll always be who you are. Some of the beliefs though that you may have, the traditions, the things that that have been maybe dropped on us that weren't a choice. So anyway, it doesn't, I don't have the evil demons in me. And I meditate. So anyway, so how can people basically buy your book? Because it's out now. Is it on like Amazon? I'm sure it has it.
Yeah, so on Amazon. It's online on Barnes & Noble too. I just stopped by my local Barnes & Noble and found it on the shelf there, which was a lovely experience to see. And so some local bookstores are carrying it, but certainly online folks can get it. They can also, my website is my hub for everything. So drjensden.com. It's drjensden.com. So folks can find links on there. My TEDx Talks are there. I have a personal consent violation story that I share on there that's pretty powerful. Links to my YouTube channel, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, all of that stuff. That's my hub.
I want you to be on our podcast every day. Now, a new one for you. This is Dr. Jenn again.
Your own podcast. We tell our listeners where they can listen to your podcast.
Oh, yeah. So I have a podcast called Sex Talk with Clint and the Doc. So Clint August is a local radio personality here in San Diego for almost 20 years. And him and I have been doing a podcast for almost the past year. So folks can find that again through my website. It's through iHeartRadio, but it's on most podcasting apps. They can find it on there.
I'm going to check that out. Thank you, Dr. Jenn. You're so amazing. And we really hope that you listeners enjoyed this as much as I have enjoyed talking with Dr. Jenn. Remember, if you haven't drank wine from Margins, you should. And you drink wine, check it out. Go to marginswine.com. Amy and I have been huge fans for almost 2 years. I think over 2 years. I'm really bad with time, so forever. And go to marginswine.com, see why we love it so much. All right, y'all. We love you always and forever. I'm all about the superlatives and what are those called where it's forever, never. What are they called?
Oh no,
absolutes right now. Thank you.
Better word for it.
There probably is. That's fine. All right. Check us out on iTunes. Give us 5 stars too if you haven't done so already. We read every review, sometimes with accents, sometimes just with love. All right, y'all. We'll see you next Tuesday. Ciao for now.
Don't forget to head on over to our website at shamelesssex.com for more. And for 15% off of some of our favorite sex toys, use coupon code SHAMELESSPP in all caps at purepleasureshop.com.